hand of a lone gunman, Baton Rouge Police Corporal Montrell Jackson, Officer Matt Gerald, Sheriff's Deputy Brad Carafoli were killed, as well as 3 other law enforcement officers being injured, Sergeant Bruce Simmons, Deputy Nick Touye, and Corporal Chad Montgomery. Deputy Touye is still fighting for what we all pray is a full recovery. He and his family have battled each and every day. Sergeant Bruce Simmons has had several surgeries and months of therapy and is on his way back from severe injuries. Corporal Montgomery has made a full recovery. My office is in its 2nd year of producing detailed officer-involved shooting reports when we find no facts to support a grand jury investigation into officer-involved shootings or deaths. Today's report is a result of a full year of investigation, meetings, and report writing. The length of this investigation and report writing was not due to any issues regarding the propriety of any officer's actions, but due to the expansive and complicated nature of this scene and our desire to report and to explain to the public exactly what happened on this day. These reports take a tremendous amount of time and attention to properly complete. Our office, like many other DA's offices around the country, now find ourselves understaffed to devote timely manpower and resources to these critically important reports. In the future, we will need to find some ways to become properly staffed and trained to shorten the length between the shooting and a report or presentation to the grand jury. As you're aware, since this shooting, there have been several other officer-involved shootings that are now awaiting review. My office practices with the large protocol has been developed across the country investigating on officer-involved shootings. And this practice that we have is in conformity with the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys' best practices, calling for responsible transparency in these matters. I am one of the authors of these standards, along with several other major district attorneys. A copy of this report is here for your review. The legal decision that my office is bound to make in these types of cases is whether the officer or officers involved in the fatal shooting were legally and factually justified in their actions. There was no doubt here regarding their justification. These courageous officers who responded to this tragedy were completely justified in dispensing of their duties and certainly saved more lives than that was taken. These officers ran into a very dangerous and unknown situation, risking their lives to save others. Because of the complexity of this crime scene and the amount of interviews and evidence collected, it took us much more time to review into detail. The events of this day and the effects that this day have had on our community call for us to provide to the public with a detailed review and explanation as to exactly what happened. Our review and the presentation to follow required us to meet on dozens of occasions with the Louisiana State Police investigative team, its supervisors, as well as Coroner Bo Clark and his staff. The team of investigators at the Louisiana State Police and those from my office spent hundreds of hours in their investigation and preparing their reports. The Louisiana State Police Bureau of Investigations and the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab did an outstanding job in this case, just as they have done in every other case that we have previously reported. Every division of the Bureau of Investigation and all of the units of the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab contributed to this investigation. I'm also grateful to Benny Alford, Benny's Be Quick staff, and its employees for all of the assistance that they provided over the several months, especially their assistance with the provided access to their videos and their surveillance cameras. From my office, I'd like to recognize and thank Mark Dumaine, First Assistant Tracy Barbera, investigators Abby Vaughn and Sonia Quigley for their tireless work and their outstanding effort in this report. The visual display and the audio used in today's presentation are due to the efforts of Deputy Adam Lockwood and Mr. Clay Young. Thanks to them for their effort. Today, we will proceed with presenting a visual display in different formats to allow those who, in viewing this display, to best see how the events of this day unfolded. Our recreation of the events will show Baton Rouge police officers reflected by blue dots and East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's deputies reflected by green dots. Each of their respective units are shown using their call numbers on the top of the depicted units. Long is depicted in yellow. The movements of those involved are shown over an aerial photograph taken on the day of the shooting. The first display that you will see will be a narrated depiction of the events as we learn they occurred. This display takes approximately 13 minutes. The second display will be a PowerPoint of approximately 150 slides, which contains screen grabs from the many video cameras that were activated at Benny's Car Wash, Be Quick, and the Crown Beauty Hair Supply Store. These cameras were, for the most part, clear, but some better than others, and were synced more closely in time than others. What you will not see is the actual killing of any person. Although these horrific killings were clearly captured on video, I've edited and removed from public view any gratuitous or morbid display of death. Just like autopsy photographs, these images will be protected from the public view, and out of respect for these officers, their children and family, and public decency, we will continue to protect them. At the point where an officer is killed, the screen will simply reflect the officer's name and his badge. The third display will be the actual video footage from several cameras showing all of the captured events from beginning to end, again, without any video footage of any deceased person. Where possible, screen grabs will be split to show the movements of both Long and in relation to the officers and the deputies. This display is also approximately 13 minutes. The final display will be the actual radio dispatch calls overlaid on the visual. You will hear the officer's initial call to dispatch and then the radio transmission throughout the event. This takes approximately 6 minutes. I've met with all of the surviving officers, some of their family members, surviving wives of the fallen officers, the chief, the sheriff, the colonel, and spoke with Long's mother yesterday to advise them of my report and these findings. The wives of the fallen officers have advised me that they do not wish to be contacted by the media following today's press conference. While I understand that this release may be painful to the families of the fallen, it is imperative upon me to produce a report that can be reviewed by the entire public. You will be provided with copies of our written report, the narrative of the events, and the timeline of the events. They're two separate timelines. The entire report and all of the documentation associated with the report will be uploaded and made available immediately following this conference. At the end of the conference and their views of the different displays, I'll answer any questions that you may have. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the narration that you see. It takes about 13 minutes. This is a photograph, aerial photograph of the scene, and it narrates the report. The report is several pages, many pages long. This gives you a narrative that you can see the condensed version of exactly what happened in a timeline fashion. What you're about to see is a visual display of the attack on law enforcement officers that occurred last summer. The attack resulted in the deaths of 3 Baton Rouge law enforcement officers, Brad Garofalo, Montreal Jackson, and Matthew Gerald, and the shootings of Nick Coulier, Bruce Simmons, and Chad Montgomery, which resulted in serious injuries, as well as the eventual killing of Gavin Long. The purpose of this display is to allow all to see the results of our many months of investigation and piecing together a very complicated, tense, and tragic series of events that captured all of Baton Rouge's attention and will remain with this community for its history. Unlike most crime scenes, we were fortunate to have photographic and video evidence of all of the events from beginning to end. This horrific scene, which took days to cover and months to investigate, only took 13 minutes and 55 seconds to conclude. The total length of this display is condensed for brevity. However, it captures the essence of all of the action of this tragic morning. It is our intention to provide a narrative to display and better explain these events, and to follow up this presentation with an alternative visual presentation with the actual radio dispatch calls from some of those involved at the scene. In the presentation, the law enforcement officers and the suspect are represented by different dots to show their movements during the time period represented. When you see a dot change and have a white stripe across the width of it, the dot is showing that the represented person has been injured. When you see a dot change to have a black interior, the dot is showing that the represented person has died. All of those who responded to provide tactical or perimeter response are not fully captured, as this display is limited only to those officers whose actions played a part in the writing of this report. Further details can be found in the many reports that are attached to my office's overall report. Our visual representation of the events that occurred on Sunday, July 17, 2016, begins at 8:35 a.m. in the 9600 block of Airline Highway. By this time, Baton Rouge police officers Matthew Gerald, who is represented by the blue dot, and East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Deputy Brad Garofalo, who is represented by the green dot, are both inside the Be Quick convenience store. Deputy Garofalo was finished working an extra duty detail, but was still present at the Be Quick. Officer Gerald stopped at the Be Quick to get a drink. Baton Rouge Police Officer Corporal Montreal Jackson, who is also represented by Blue Dot, had just finished washing his car and was still nearby. At the start of this video, Corporal Jackson is in his marked Baton Rouge Police Unit, which is represented by his call sign 3519, parked at the edge of Benny's Car Wash, facing in the direction of the Fitness Expo Center. Both Officer Gerald and Deputy Garofalo were parked out front of the Be Quick. Officer Gerald's marked Baton Rouge Police Unit is denoted with his call sign 8211. Deputy Garofalo's unit is marked with his call sign F12. Gavin Long arrives in the area in a rented white Chevrolet Malibu, which is represented in the video as the yellow and red box labeled suspect. Long is also represented by the red and yellow dot labeled with a S. Long pulls into the driveway of the Hair Crown Beauty Supply store and exits his vehicle dressed in black pants, a black shirt, and wearing a black mask covering most of his face. Additionally, Long was carrying an Israel Weapons Industry Tavor semi-automatic rifle. Long can be seen walking up to Officer Gerald's Baton Rouge Police Unit and slightly raises his rifle as if to shoot the vehicle's occupant. However, Officer Gerald was still inside the Be Quick at this time. Long then returns to his vehicle and exits the Hair Crown parking lot and turns onto Carroll and Sioux Drive, then onto Old Hammond Highway, then Airline Highway. While Officer Gerald was standing in the checkout line at the Be Quick, a civilian ran inside and alerted him that there was a man outside who was armed with a rifle. By the time Officer Gerald and Deputy Garofalo go outside to look for Long, Long was driving past them in his car. Long would have also passed Corporal Jackson as he drove by the Fitness Expo Center. After passing the three law enforcement officers, Long pulls into a nearby store's parking lot and heads back toward the Be Quick, driving against traffic on the shoulder of Airline Highway. After briefly looking for Long, Officer Gerald asked dispatch to send him a few units. Corporal Jackson immediately leaves his parking space and drives across the lot to Officer Gerald. While Corporal Jackson is driving to Officer Gerald, Long pulls into the parking lot behind the Fitness Expo Center. Corporal Jackson then tells dispatch to send more units because there was a man with a rifle in the area. Meanwhile, Deputy Garofalo gets his ballistic vest out of his unit, puts it on, and radios his location to dispatch. Deputy Garofalo, Officer Gerald, and Corporal Jackson proceed to the back of the Hair Crown building, which was the area where Long was last seen by civilians. While they are heading to the back of the building, Long is swiftly moving behind Benny's Car Wash and Be Quick. Long passes multiple civilians on his way toward the officers and does not give any civilian a second look. In fact, it appears in the surveillance footage that he waves at a group of civilians when he exits the alley near Officer Gerald's car before he heads to the front of the Hair Crown building. Meanwhile, Deputy Garofalo is a few feet ahead of Officer Gerald and Corporal Jackson and turns the corner to the back of the Hair Crown building. Corporal Jackson and Officer Gerald have their backs to Airline Highway and are approaching the backside of the Hair Crown building. Although Officer Gerald glances over his shoulder multiple times, Long stays out of sight and takes cover on the front corner of the building and opens fire on the two Baton Rouge police officers. Corporal Jackson runs a few steps towards Long, but then collapses on the grassy side of the alley where he succumbs to his injuries. Officer Gerald takes a few steps behind the corner of the Hair Crown building before he collapses as well. Officer Gerald radios shots fired before succumbing to his injuries. Meanwhile, Deputy Garofalo, who is out of sight from Long during the first round of gunfire, takes cover near a dumpster. Moments later, Corporal Montgomery and his partner arrive on the scene and pull into the Hair Crown driveway, where they are immediately met with gunfire from Long. The rounds go through the front windshield of Corporal Montgomery's marked police unit, hitting Corporal Montgomery on the right side of his head, just above his ear. Still in the fire, Corporal Montgomery pulls his marked police unit into the front parking lot of the Hair Crown. As he's turning into the parking lot, his unit is struck by another bullet
in the rear passenger window. Both Corporal Montgomery and his partner jump out of the car as it is still rolling to deal with an active shooter. After shooting at Corporal Montgomery, Long proceeds toward the back of the half-round building where he sees Deputy Garafola. Deputy Garafola had taken cover by the dumpster and was tactically assessing the area when he saw Officer Gerald lying on the ground. While on his way to aid Officer Gerald, Deputy Garafola is met by Long, who turns the corner and opens fire. Deputy Garafola engages Long in the gunfight while trying to create distance between himself and Long. Deputy Garafola then falls but continues shooting at Long. However, Deputy Garafola has been fatally wounded. Long then turns his attention to Officer Gerald and fires 2 more rounds at the fallen officer before running to the side of Benny's warehouse. Long positions himself between Carroll and Sioux Drive and Airline Highway, reloads his weapon, and then fires at 2 Baton Rouge police officers who arrive to maintain a perimeter on Airline Highway. One of the officers fires 2 rounds back at Long. However, he noted that Long did not appear as if he had been struck by any of the bullets. Long then continued to move behind the warehouse into a wooded area behind Fitness Expo's rear gravel parking lot. On the other side of this vast crime scene, Deputy Nicholas Touye, who's represented by the green dot in his unit with his call sign T82, arrives at the Fitness Expo rear parking lot. East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office Sergeant Bruce Simmons, who's also represented by a green dot in his unit with his call sign T81, arrives and parks by the entrance to the Fitness Expo building. Deputy Touye parks behind Long's rental vehicle and exits his marked unit to inspect Long's vehicle. While Deputy Touye is inspecting Long's car, Sergeant Simmons gets out of his unit with a shotgun in hand. As Deputy Touye is walking back to his unit, Long emerges from the wooded area and begins to open fire on Deputy Touye and Sergeant Simmons. Deputy Touye gets hit, falls to the ground, and then crawls inside of his unit for cover. Long fires more rounds directly at Deputy Touye's unit, causing more injuries to the already wounded deputy. Meanwhile, Sergeant Simmons is shot in the left arm while walking towards Deputy Touye. Sergeant Simmons immediately seeks cover and alerts dispatch that shots have been fired and deputies have been wounded. Shortly after shots are fired at Deputy Touye and Sergeant Simmons, multiple members of Baton Rouge Police Department's Special Response Team arrive on scene. 2 of the SRT units park by the gas pump, while 1 unit parked next to the pole holding up the Benny's Car Wash sign. Each unit carried 2 SRT members. The 2 SRT members who parked near the pole saw Long square up and begin to fire at them. They immediately took cover and returned fire. During the gun battle, one of the SRT members shoots Long in the leg, causing him to fall on the ground near his vehicle. Long fell face down with his hands near his head and his rifle above his hands. By this time, the 4 other SRT members had run toward the direction of the gunfire. 2 SRT members took post at the corner of the entrance to Benny's Car Wash, keeping their rifles trained on Long to protect their teammates. The remaining 2 SRT members joined the initial pair, and the 4 of them advanced towards Long's vehicle, giving loud verbal commands such as, "Don't move." 4 SRT members got in position facing in Long's direction, while 2 provided cover. Long then begins to move his hands towards his rifle, causing 1 SRT member to fire 2 rounds at Long. After those 2 rounds, SRT members report seeing Long reaching again for his rifle. Fearing Long was going to rearm himself, 5 of the SRT members opened fire on Long, killing him. Soon after, an SRT member announces over the radio that the suspect was down. Once the suspect was down, the injured officers were transported to the local hospital. The SRT members could see that Long was wearing a vest under his clothing. Fearing that it could contain explosives, they did not approach Long and instead held cover and maintained the scene while waiting for a remote-controlled bomb robot to be deployed. The bomb robot was deployed and found no evidence of explosives on Long's body. After the scene was deemed secured, the scene was maintained for the investigation.
So that's the narrated version following our review of the volumes of reports that we had that really, I think, capsulize exactly what happened, as much detail as we can best describe it. So the next display that we'll have will be an actual PowerPoint of the actual pictures, the screen grabs of the video that you'll see that'll break it down step by step as to where everybody was, as you've now seen from, heard from the narration. This will give you a little bit of idea of how things were moving on that day. Abby? Starts with the three officers, obviously, all in the Be Quick that morning, just to humanize them. You'll see Montreal Jackson's unit parked there after he's finished. You'll eventually see another vehicle move toward Montreal's unit. Brad always had a smile on his face. It's his vehicle, it's an unmarked vehicle. Officer Gerald's the first to receive any notification that there's a person outside with a gun. You see his unit, 8211. This is him actually arriving at the Be Quick that morning. Now, again, just stop right there for a second if you mind. What we did not know, and probably don't know conclusively, but we believe we fairly certain. We didn't know whether Long had come to the Be Quick and staked out the Be Quick. There was some discussion that officers were always at the Be Quick. That's a place that he would know to go if he wanted to kill multiple officers. And we really didn't know whether that was the case. We had no proof that that was. And just a few days ago, in reviewing it, the volumes of video that the state police did, and they did a fabulous job with technical support section. We didn't know until reviewing some more footage. You'll see, this is the turn lane where the where the red arrow is on the right-hand side, actually both. You see Officer Gerald's vehicle. He's the first to arrive there. You see him in a turn lane. He's making a turn in a turn lane on Airline Highway going into Benny's. We did not know until recently that white car that has the arrow on the right-hand side, that's actually Long's vehicle. And some of you have reported that Long had stayed the night before right down the street at the Knights Motel, which is very close to there. So obviously he had left the motel. You'll see another depiction of how that occurred. But he actually left the Knights Motel, went down there on Highway, presumably to police headquarters, and then was probably on his way back here when he, just by chance, we believe, sees Officer Gerald pulling to Be Quick. And you'll see in the video, he actually hesitates and marks his time as if he's either trying to get right behind him, or when he can't, he eventually will go forward down Airline Highway, will make an illegal U-turn onto oncoming traffic. You see two cars will almost hit him if you have to stop and continue to replay this as we have. So this seems to indicate that he may not have been targeting Benny's Be Quick, but just happened to see Officer Gerald. I cannot tell you that with 100% certainty. It just appears to be that. So, now this is after he's made his U-turn. He's on his way back. You see him now. He's pulling. You see the police unit out in front of Be Quick, and you see Long pulling in that white rental vehicle, parking on the side of the near Crown, getting out of his vehicle, and he comes around walking toward Officer Gerald's vehicle. Here he is, dressed up, camouflage. Dressed in black. You see him slightly raise his weapon. Obviously, Officer Gerald is inside. He checks again, he knows it's not there, then he's going back to his unit. He goes down, and this is the route that he takes. He actually goes all the way down to Carolyn Sue, and then will come back around, obviously planning to come back to Venice because he knows he at least has one officer. Now, Gerald is alerted first, and he's the first to come outside. You see Gerald going outside now, looking by himself for a gun. Garafola was in the back getting a drink stand. You could see him looking over toward the employees and the folks whose faces are blurred out. He sees something's going on. He hears something. He senses something, and he's looking. And he eventually will come out and join Gerald. here they are, all outside, employees and police. You see Long's vehicle with the red arrow. So now he at least sees there's a commotion, and he at least sees one uniform officer, because Garofalo is not in uniform. He's passing Benny's now. Here's Montreal. There was a customer that was in the store whose name would never been able to identify. And you see this black vehicle. That person, he or she, heard what was going on, and they're heading now because they see Montreal's unit. He or she pulls up to Montreal's unit and says, "Hey, you may want to come inside because there was a guy with a gun, and your folks may need some help." And you'll see the vehicles move from there. Garofalo at this point does not have on his vest. He's coming back to retrieve his vest. Here he is getting his vest out of his vehicle. And here's Montreal coming to front of the Be Quick. And you see now the direction of Long. He actually makes another illegal turn, drives back against traffic, and eventually gets on the shoulder of the road and goes to the fitness expo. So as Montreal is leaving, Long is now coming forward. Long sees he now has at least another unit, Montreal Jackson, so he knows now he has two different police units. Probably does not know about Garofalo, because he's not in uniform. And this is the group of them discussing what was relayed to them, and I'm assuming planning on how they're going to handle the situation. And at this point, Long is at this position, can see all three of them directly in front of him to his right. Then getting out of his vehicle. Again, whether he knew of Benny's or did not know of Benny's, it appears as if when he gets out of the vehicle, I think you'd see it better in the video, he actually walks toward the front of Benny's where all the officers were, but then sees that they have moved or sees that there are too many people, and then you'll see him, either in this one or another, he goes back behind Benny's and he eventually runs into a fence that he obviously didn't know was there, and you'll see he's making his way out. So that's the route to be clear. Here he is, he's leaving his vehicle. You can see the dress that he has. This camera is actually improperly focused on that piece of wood. Therefore, you'll see that, that this is somewhat blurry. It'll be blurry throughout. And here they all three are going where they last learned of him to be. This is him now coming around the back side of the car wash. He runs into civilians, and sometimes you maybe see, I don't know if his hand is somewhat slightly raised or just because of the way he was walking. But look at, you can see the size of the Tavor weapon that he has. It's a very large, high quality weapon. I don't know whether that's a wave or that's just the way that he walks, but he does for sure wave when he gets to Officer Gerald's vehicle, as if to say, I'm with them, or it's okay, or it's just a wave. I'm not sure. He steps it up. He's looking around to his back from time to time, as the officers properly did. And this is the fence that he runs into. He knows that now over there, there's Officer Gerald's unit, where he actually does the wave. Now, you see the officers, they have no idea where the gunman is. They look, Officer Gerald and Montreal look on the other side of this fence, then you eventually see no one there, and they're cutting the pie, so to speak, and then now they're focused on going around the side of the hair crown. And you see Garofalo is leading, he's up front, and the two Baton Rouge police officers are behind. You see Officer Gerald looking back to make sure that no one is behind him, as he should. I believe the officers have handled the situation as they were trained, as anyone else could have handled this situation. Now, Garofalo starts to peek around the backside. He sees there's a trash bin there. I'm not sure where the suspect is hiding there. And here he is, doing what he's supposed to do. And this officer, two Baton Rouge police officers. At this point, it appears as if things are clear. And I would assume that the officer may breathe somewhat of a sigh of relief at this point, although obviously I do not know. Now Gavin is stepping it up. He's moving around the front of the building, again looking behind him to make sure there's no other officers coming. And he'll eventually come. He's going to use the shade in the corner of the building, now presumably knowing or suspecting that he has at least three. You see he takes aim at this point at Gerald and Jackson because he cannot see Garafola at this point. And you see how he aims and tactically how he moves. At this point, there are the videos on videos and the photographs we're able to take at this point are unfortunately very good quality, good in the sense of quality only. But what's depicted obviously is two officers who are ambushed and killed. It's hard to watch that over and over. I've seen that 100 times, but it's still difficult to watch. And so at this point, out of respect for these officers and their family and their children, we have protected that and will continue to protect that. But they were actually both fatally wounded at this point. Now, this is long, again, after the two officers are dead, again, doesn't know where Garafola is, but Chad Montgomery, the Baton Rouge police, is coming, driving in, and you see the stance that Long takes, and Long now draws down on Montgomery, fires two shots toward Montgomery. And this is from the dash cam in Officer Montgomery's car. You can actually see Long shooting at his direction. He eventually takes out the dash cam after this, so it's of no more value then. And when you see the picture, you see the hole in the windshield. He aimed directly for the officer, obviously. And Long now is moving forward. Now Garafola has now heard all of the other shots. He's then now heard the shots toward Chad Montgomery. Now he knows that someone is potentially still there, obviously still there. He takes cover, but at this point, blocked from your view, Officer Gerald is directly in front of Deputy Garafola, and Deputy Garafola is not only running toward fire, but he's also running to assist Officer Gerald, who is down on the ground. Again, he is Long is cutting the pie, so to speak, and getting in a position where he can do the most damage. And you see the position that he takes. When you see the video, Long moves in and out. He continues to move his body and his step as he continues to fire at Officer Garafola. At this point, Deputy Garafola is shot and killed. He put up a heck of a fight. Again, difficult to watch and just describe, but just to see a man come to the aid of another who didn't work with, probably didn't know, but just come to his aid and do everything that he could do. It was a really heroic part on his behalf. So now, the officers are all down and they're all dead. In fact, after Long shot Garafola, you can see him, he makes a different move. He shoots Officer Gerald, who's down, presumably, to make sure that he was down, but he shoots him at him 2 more times. After he does that, he then runs toward the back of the aircraft, toward Carol and Sue, where he will stop by the air conditioning unit. He reloads his vehicle there. Then he sees the 2 uniformed officers that come to Airline Highway to set up the perimeter, and they fire each other here. And he is in a tactical position as well at this point. So now, after he fires at the officers on Airline, this is the route that he takes to go back to his vehicle. This is actually the only route he could take because of buildings and fences that have been in place. So at this point, Deputy Touye and Bruce Simmons, who were not far down the road from the street, they hear the radio transmission from Garafola, which you will hear. You also have to remember that the Baton Rouge Police and Sheriff's Office have different radios, so they're not actually hearing each other say the same thing. And at this point, however, they were alerted. They dropped wherever they were, immediately went toward this scene. They have, again, no idea actually what's happening other than shots are fired, people are down. They don't know where anyone is at this point. And Deputy Touye pulls in, he actually sees this vehicle, and he's doing what he is trained to do, look at this vehicle. It seems to be out of place, and he's going to go take a look at this vehicle, and you'll see he goes behind him, he inspects the vehicle, and presumably now is going back to his unit to run the license plate and find out more about this vehicle as things are unfolding. Then you'll see right behind him, Sergeant Bruce Simmons pulls in. At this point, unknown to both of these deputies, and no one really knows where the shooter is. The shooter is now in the covered woods behind the Fitness Expo. You could not see him. He was completely covered by where he was. And when he opens fire, and you see the arrow where he is, when he opens fire at Deputy Touye and Sergeant Simmons, they couldn't see him. No chance they could see him by any means that they would have taken. And he hits Touye as he goes back to his unit. And you see him come out of the woods eventually. There he is as he steps out. The shooting of the two deputies has already taken place. Took place in the woods. You will learn later that only 5 shell casings from Long were found on the concrete area here. That's because he was shooting in the woods, and those shell casings were just difficult to find. The shell casings that remain on the concrete are those that you'll eventually see he fired the SRT officers at the sign. At this point, these officers are both injured, and this is where Long starts to engage SRT. Very fortunate that SRT was right down the street at Baton Rouge headquarters. This was the last day that they were going to be on high alert. They got there within a matter of minutes, and these guys did a phenomenal job of really quenching a situation that was obviously extremely dangerous, and more lives would have been lost. So this is Long is shot in the leg. This would takes him down. Presumably, he could not get up and run again. However, he falls back toward the woods. His hands are above his head, and the gun is right above his head, as described in the narrative earlier. He lunges for his weapon again. You see his head is raising. He's shot again. And here the SRT officers arrive and have arrived already, firing toward Long as he reaches for his rifle. And the other officers, you can see they're trying to get Deputy Touye out of his unit to a waiting unit to take to an ambulance, and also taking care of Long, who continues to appear to them to be a threat to reach for a weapon. Again, at this point, unknown whether he has any body, a bomb, or any type of device on his body. Barricade comes in and inspects the situation, and eventually you find no explosives. And that's real loud. So the next presentation is the actual video footage, and it is slowed down in some parts, just so you can kind of see. And again, the parts that depict an officer being shot or a visible body being shown, we do not show that. At the beginning of the video, when it opens up, you're going to see Long leaving the Knights Motel, checking out of the Knights Motel. You'll see him come into the counter where the lady is doing the working. He throws his key on the counter and has some discussion with the lady. And I also want to note that the timestamp is 12 hours off. So it shows maybe 1900 is 7 o'clock in the morning, close to 8. But he puts his key on the counter and has some discussion with the lady. And at some point, it appears as if the 3-page letter that's referred to in the report as a suicide letter, for lack of a better word. There's a 3-page letter that is found eventually in Long's vehicle. He asked her to make copies of that letter, and it appears that she had a difficult time making copies of the letter with the machine. Maybe it was too light. I think he wanted them on front and back. She had no idea what the letter was that she was copying, other than said family and friends. She didn't read any further. And at some point, it appears as if possibly the letter was not dark enough in his handwriting to copy, and he may have, he wasn't pleased with the copy he had. He sits at the table and looks like he's writing either a letter or writing over the letter that he has. Again, I can't be 100% certain, but you see him leave, and it's right around 8 o'clock, and recall everything begins at around 8:30. So there's 30 minutes in there that are somewhat unaccounted for. Was he mailing a letter? Was he doing something? Did he go to police headquarters? Was he looking, searching for officers? Obviously, he was. Where did he actually go? Don't know, but you know from the video that he at least went down Airline Highway, past Betty's, in the direction of the Baton Rouge Police Headquarters, and potentially found nothing or found it secure, and then was on the way back. I think there's a split screenshot here so you can see both actions of all the different parties when it's appropriate. This is him at the motel. And the lady's face will be blurred out. I don't know if you can stop right there or not, but you notice his dress. I can't tell, we cannot tell whether, it looks to me great, but we believe that's the same black that he had on, and maybe it's the camera. Can't be for certain, but it appears to be the same clothing that he was wearing. He's asking about the copy machine. He tells her he has a letter in the car he'd like to copy it. And this is sped up because it did take many minutes, so just excuse the see how many times it was attempted. And that's him at the table. Now, again, not certain for sure. But he goes back to the copier. And it seems like he has several things in his hands. And you see the timestamp, it's just off. So it's right around 8 o'clock, a few minutes before. And now, if you don't mind, sorry it's a little late, but you saw the video, Officer Gerald turning the turn lane and then the white vehicle behind him. Okay. And here's Gerald. That's Gerald turning, the white car behind him, actually in a different lane. It's kind of slowing down a little bit right there where the arrow is. And we'll see the next shot. That's Montreal. And you'll see the white car pass down Airline Highway, where he now knows he potentially sees 2 units. That's him going past there. And if you look hard enough down the road, you may have to stop it several times here. But if you see cars coming, the white car, he gets held up at a red light or so, but he makes a U-turn while he's not supposed to because of the cars. Because you see them coming, he makes a turn up to the top left-hand side of the screen. There he is, right in front of the cars that's coming in his direction. And he'll be coming around now to make his initial entry to the campground. A few seconds before he gets out of his vehicle, I assume he's getting his gear. You see him slightly raise his rifle right there, and then he sees no one's there, gets a better look and moves. He's going to get back in his vehicle. There'll be another car oncoming in that parking lot back there. And when we get to this spot, I'm going to ask Abby to stop it. Now, I guess he'll be familiar with this area now that he's been through here once. So you see the car coming, and a little bit further down the video, this goes all the way back to Carol and Sue, and if you don't mind stopping right there. Again, trying to figure out whether he had been here before and knew the area. It appears in the video that the trooper, again, did an outstanding job on this video. It appears as if as he's going down this drive, instead of making a right where he would presumably know where he's going, he actually looks like he's veering to the left. And it's hard to see, but if you stop and look at it several times, and as he veers to the left and sees it's either a dead end or not the way to go, he'll eventually take a right back onto Carol and Sue or Hamlin and Airline. So at this point, the officers are, particularly Officer Gerald, are probably being alerted, and here they are coming outside with the employees. And there's Long coming around. This is a different camera from a different site that'll catch Long going down Airline Highway and then making the illegal U-turn and driving against traffic to come to the fitness expo. Now, the split screen, so you can kind of see what's happening at the same time. These cameras were only off by, I think, a second between the different cameras. You see him check the other side of the fence, again, not knowing exactly where it could be. Surely not knowing he's behind him in the car. They're radioing in at this point as well. So he stopped. Obviously, he went to the front of the Be Quick and either saw something that he didn't like, and then eventually comes back toward the backside and he steps up his pace. car wash area, not to be quick. Officer Gerald's vehicle is to his right as he's walking up. And, this is around this point is where he sees someone and gives a wave. Point is where he begins the shooting, and video will be cut here. He looks on the other side of the fence because he's not sure exactly what's happening. He wants to know where everyone is. And here comes Montgomery. Turns and fires at Montgomery twice. And you'll see you do not see the officers in this picture that came out. And here how he moves back and forth as Garofalo is engaging him, shooting at him 13 times. He'll turn the corner and shoot at Officer Gerald 2 more times. And then he'll run toward the field. Engage the other officers on the street in uniform unit. If you look close enough, you'll see he gets on a knee and takes a position of fire. And here comes Deputy Touye and Sergeant Simmons. Again, at this point, no one really knows where the shooter is. The SRT has not yet arrived. Deputy Touye is trying to assess everything that's going on, and he goes to the vehicle and then goes back to his unit, where as he's returning, he receives the fire from the wood. You can see on the top of his unit, you'll see smoke coming on the top as the unit is taking fire. There it is. There it is again. And third. One of those shots, and then one of those actually toward Sergeant Simmons. And here he comes out of the woods. And SRT is arriving at this point. And he takes aim at SRT. And he gets shot in the leg and goes down. And he's still moving. And the video ends there because at this point, there are other rounds that are fired at this point as described. But Deputy Touye is also be tended to and taking out of that his unit into another waiting unit to an ambulance. So that was cut at this time. So the last display before questions is actual dispatch. This is the one that's probably the most emotional, surely for the officers' lives. We have met with all the officers' wives, all of those that have survived, and some family members, and we've shown them the displays that you have seen and described to them what happened. And this one obviously is the most emotional because you do hear the majority of the people involved on the radio, you hear some of their last words. So regardless of how many times you listen to it, it's an emotional matter. But it gives you the timing as to how things occurred. You hear what they're saying. This takes, I think, 6 minutes. It's overlaid over the same visual that you saw. You will not hear dispatch until they start on the radio. You see the circles, but you won't hear dispatch until it's the appropriate time. Abby? So presumably around here, Officer Gerald is being given some information.
Hey, Julian. Can you send me a couple of units to be quick on airline and old Jim?
Yeah, we're missing units out of it. Show the guy with a rifle next to the bill.
Just be advised, I'll be out in the city at the P-Clip on Airline Highway, on Amber Mall. Supposedly a lady came up and said there was somebody walking with a coat and assault rifle out here behind this store. Be out of the city units behind their hair salon, just right next door to the P-Clip.
Hey, Julian. You're on the backside of the Hair Crown Beauty Supply building.
Shots fired, officer down behind the building, and Hair Crown. Unknown where the turkey shooting from.
Shots fired.
Yourself, Dave?
Caroline, okay, with 6-3.
We got a rifle? Hey, officer down, we will. Down. Shot, still fired. To the back. I'm pointing over here. Stay line.
You talk, you're not working over the jury, that's the crime.
hit. 82's hit. Coming from behind the old Floyd Brown. The EMF to her.
Take cover. 4 shots fired.
All right, the shot just bumped me right in front of my fitness. You want to say? I'm hit. I'm in front of on the side of the old Floyd Brown. About pole on him.
Take what?
Left arm.
We have a shooter down behind the victim desk for black male, black fatigue, maybe wearing body armor, for assault rifle. He is down. Unless we have information on a second shooter, we are code forward on Airline Highway. EMS can come in. We have eyes on the subject. We are not going to move in to engage this time. He is down.
Scene is secure. Everybody hold up position. We're not finished with the down suspect. We're going to have a rubber coming kicking out before we release that weapon.
So, it's hard to listen to, regardless of the time you listen to it.